Spring of 2021, I spoke with my brother and my best friend from high school, and I'm like, hey, I really think that I'm onto something with this tour idea. I'm like, I would love you guys to join me. Let's take this thing and let's flush it out.
You are saying, at least for the beginning of the story, that you had one car, you rented out this car, and you were taking a bus, taking public transport to get to your destination, wherever you want to go. That is something that is really, not everybody is able to do that. And until everybody is able to make that step, the money is not going to come by just magic.
That's a good question. I think for me, the mindset is, one, you have to be an optimistic thinker. So it starts there. You cannot have a lack deficit or a lack way of thinking. I had 30 cars at one point. Right now I have about 8. And the reason being is because the market was so saturated. It was, we had more cars sitting at one point than we're moving. So as a business owner, I have to adapt to the demands of the market. That doesn't mean that I'll never have 30 cars again, but right now, the need is not for 30 cars within the marketplace because of how saturated it became.
Thank you for joining us in today's episode of the Obehi Podcast. I remain your host, Obehi Ewanfo. And here we continue to promote the idea that storytelling is the most powerful instrument that we can have. Because when you own your story and hone it, and also use it as a way to differentiate yourself in the competition, you have no competition actually, because there is no other copy of you in this universe. You are the only one who is original. Every other person that want to copy you is a counterfeit. So you have nothing to compete against. So that is why we are saying that often time. So I have the honor of having a guest that I want to interview today, who is Mr. Quentin. Quentin, thank you so much for being here with me. Could you please tell the people who you are? That is where we start from.
Yes, good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. My name is Quentin Harris, and I wear a few hats. I serve as the director of elementary programs for a nonprofit or NGO in some places called the Academy Group. Aside from that, I am an entrepreneur, and I work 2 different brands. One is a consulting brand, hybrid focused consulting, where I support local small businesses and nonprofits with scaling. And then I own a very small peer-to-peer car sharing rental service called JQLR, which stands for Just Quick Little Runs. So, and I am happy to be on the podcast today.
Thank you so much for that, Quentin. I really appreciate the fact that you're here. Now, let's take a moment to understand you. Okay, I'm not saying that you're an old man now, but at least you were a boy yesterday too. So take us to when you were a kind of an adolescent. This is important to, of course, understand you better. What are you seeing around yourself as a young adolescent?
So I am one of 6 siblings. I am the 3rd son of 6. And so I have 2 older brothers. I have 3 younger sisters. I'm raised in the city of Chicago, and just the outskirts of it. So Bellwood, which is like a small suburb of the greater Chicagoland area, but 12 minutes from downtown Chicago. So pretty much right there in the heart of the greater Chicagoland area. And my mom was from the south of the states. And so from Mississippi, she moved to Chicago during the Mississippi riots in the 60s, and quickly was searching for her identity. And my mom was very big on education, wanted to learn. She was in the 1971 women's founding cohort of Lane Tech, which is a very, very prestigious high school in the Chicagoland area, one of the top 10 in the Illinois area. And so, she took that. You fast forward and to when she was 28, that's when I was born. She really poured this idea of learning into her children. And so we are very much educationally advanced in that sense, where she pushed us to pursue college education. So I went to Concordia University, where I studied kinesiology, which is a fancy way of saying exercise science. But I was also a student athlete. I played basketball. And so I graduated from there. I went and got my master's degree, and I learned very quickly on that I had a gift for serving the community and young people. And so I spent 12 years working primarily in classroom and school spaces, with a concentration on special education. So I worked very much with young people who had autism, and I went on to get a behavior therapy license, in which I work specifically in the field called ABA, which is applied behavior analysis. And so I work with kids who had autism on various ends of the spectrum, helping them to adapt and become more socially aware, understand how to leverage the skill sets that they have to better serve themselves and their families, as well as to help their families be able to better serve their child. And so I did that for quite some time. And roughly 7 years ago, around 2018, I realized I was like, hey, I was wrapping up my master's degree, and I felt that I had more capacity in the space of education. I often said that, classrooms, you get to work with 25 to 30 students at a time, and then you move them on to the next teacher. And so a lot of the times the work that you feel like you've been able to pour into them, in many ways, if not nurtured, it can become undone. And so I'm like, I would love to be in a space where I could work with young people for longer stretches of time and really be able to see what that impact looks like over time. And so that's when I found the Academy Group. Been here now 7 years. The young people that I started with 7 years ago were fourth graders, and now they are in their senior years. And so I've been able to not only work with those young people, but work with their families. And so the trust that I have with those young people, as well as their parents, has really allowed me to continue to pour into them over that time frame. And so I'm very excited to where the next 3 to 5 years can take them, because I get to see those same young people graduate from college who I began to work with when they were just fourth graders. And so the work is very rewarding. So I'm very excited about that.
Thank you so much for that. I appreciate that. I appreciate that for the work that you are doing in the community. Of course, you can also see the reward coming out. Of course, see the children that you are happy to shaping, being in shape instead
Yes.
of directing the. That is really rewarding. That is more than money. That is more than money for most people. People need to realize that. I really appreciate that. Now, tell me about your business. You are a founder. I hear we spend a lot of time talking about founders, business owner, because that is a different animal in the forest. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, so I'll start with JQLR. JQLR is the first business that I basically started, and that was 2018. And so 2018, I had just finished paying for my first vehicle. And when I had finished paying for it, I'm a car guy. And so I'll just start there. And so I was like, man, I wanted to figure out, like, how can I get into a newer vehicle without spending a lot of money? I'm like, man, I just finished paying for this off. I'm getting money back, and I would like something new, but let's not spend, let's dig ourselves back into a hole again. And so I began to do my research, and I found Turo. Turo is a US-based peer-to-peer car sharing platform. So if you think internationally, I'm sure Airbnb is in Italy. And so Airbnb is very much similar to Turo in the sense that Airbnb, you can rent people's homes or their apartments. Turo, you can rent people's cars. And so anybody can kind of get on the platform and put their car on there. And so I decided, like, hey, I'm going to take this car and put it on the platform. Let's see how it does. So I got it ready, made sure that all the maintenance was on point, put it on the platform. Took me a couple of weeks, but I got my first renter, and he was just a gentleman coming in from the Phoenix area. His daughter had a soccer tournament that weekend, and he was like, hey, I just need a good car to get me from point A to point B. It went well, and the car then went on to be booked 13 weekends in a row after that. And so I realized, I'm like, what, I'm on to something here. And so I found myself, going from having a car to hopping on the bus and on the train while other people were using my car. And this started to become a form of, passive income for me. As time went on, I began to use it. And, you fast forward to 2020, we got into the pandemic era. And so I was kind of using it off and on, but because of the pandemic, a lot of people were not flying. A lot of people were not getting into, getting on trains with public transportation. They wanted to drive where they could be by themselves. And so that really opened up the door for Turo to really start to expand. And so for me, I was like, hey, this is an opportunity to scale this business. So in the latter part of 2020, I invested in another vehicle. I had already at that point gotten another car. And so I basically went from having one car on Turo to three cars on Turo. During that window of time, my mom had fell ill and was not able to drive. So I told her, like, hey, I'll take your car and I'll pay your car note and I'll split with you half of the profits that I make. So that way you can still have a little bit of income coming in. So I did that with my mom. And so here it was that I went from one car to three cars on this platform. And I really started to see like, hey, I'm on to something here. And so in the spring of 2021, I spoke with my brother and my best friend from high school. And I'm like, hey, I really think that I'm on to something with this Turo idea. I'm like, I would love you guys to join me. Let's like take this thing and let's flush it out. And I've always been a systems thinker. So I'm like, hey, I got all the systems in place. This is how we do it. This will be your job. This will be your job. This is what I'll do and contribute. And I'm like, I think we can really blow this up. I'm like, you guys, give me a year. I can have you in any type of car that you want to drive. And so sure enough, April 13th of 2021, we incorporated the business. They joined me. They invested in the car piece. We had 5 cars at that point. And within 20 months, we had lifted the business to another 20 vehicles. So 20 cars in 20 months is what I always say. And so, you know, it went great. We scaled so fast. We were able to essentially over the course of about up till now generate almost $1 million in revenue in that business. And so not all profit, but the idea was that we were able to build a sustainable functioning business that you know, is basically took a life of its own. So now that business, we've scaled back since then because Turo has become a lot more saturated with people, but it's operating, it runs itself. And that was something that I'm very proud of because, you know, essentially you always wonder, like, can I be a successful business owner, right? It takes work. And so there was a lot of things happening behind the scenes that people didn't see, from getting up early in the morning before work to deliver cars to people who are renting them, to get them prepared. You know, cars come back late at night, midnight, and it has to go back out the next morning. Somebody has to clean it out. Somebody has to get it ready to go. And so those are the things that a lot of the people were not seeing that were happening. All they saw was the continued success. But there was work that was happening behind the scenes to make that possible. And so, you know, it has instilled a layer of work ethic in me that has allowed me to be able to support other business owners and founders. Like, hey, you have to dig in. If you're really passionate about this thing, you have to see it all the way through for the long haul. This is not a like, hey, I'm going to pour in 3 to 6 months worth of work and it's just going to do its own thing. No, it's constant refining. It's constant revision. It's constant, you know, looking at your strategy and saying, is this still working? Where might I need to tweak a few things? And so being a business owner is essentially being the boss of yourself. And you have to have already been tough and be able to take that toughness from other bosses and other leaders to be able to be that for you. And so one of the things that I think has really been profound in me being a good business owner is like playing team sports, for example, the hierarchy of receiving coaching from, whether it's the senior on your team as a freshman, or the coach or the assistant coach, or hearing things from the athletic director, or being able to receive that and the multiple forms that it comes has allowed me to adapt that into being a business owner and coaching myself, and not getting lost in imposter syndrome, and like, hey, let's stick to what we know. Let's stick to the fact. And when you actually need that support, leaning on people who have done it at a high level, other business owners who have been successful, saying, hey, I'm stuck here. What works for you? And so, so very proud of that. And so I'll pause because that was a lot as far as JQLR, but I can lean into hybrid focus as well.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that. I really do. Of course, you give us the really clear and complete picture of the company. But that led me to an important question that I think, at least from the way I'm looking at it, which is the mindset of an entrepreneur as a founder. Because now, somebody that is looking at the story, if you didn't tell this story, they would think that probably you just got somebody that come with a bagload of money, so you started a business, no? But now you are saying, at least from the beginning of the story, that you had one car, you rented out this car, and you were taking a bus, taking public transport to get to your destination, wherever you want to go. That is something that is really not everybody is able to do that, and until everybody is able to make that step, the money is not going to come by just magic. That is why I think the mindset is very important for me here. So, as a founder, as an entrepreneur, how do you differentiate the mindset that you have as an entrepreneur versus the regular person?
That's a good question. I think for me, the mindset is one, you have to be a optimistic thinker. So it starts there. You cannot have a lack deficit or a lack way of thinking. Like something is happening in me, or man, why am I always? It can't be that. No matter what is going on, you always have to have a mindset of like, okay, this didn't go the way that I anticipated. What can I learn? Or this didn't go the way that I anticipated, but here's the nugget here. If we're always like, oh, this happened to me, or and it's always a pessimistic way of thinking, you will not survive as an entrepreneur. So that's the first part. The second part is you have to be objective. I think it's easy to kind of look at things from our own perspective. When I come in a room, I try not to always look at it from my perspective. I try to look at it from a very neutral perspective. What if I was the fly on the wall? How am I being perceived in this room? How do I show up in this room? How do my peers show up in this room? And so you have to take that same mindset into business, because I didn't just get into business because I just wanted to be an entrepreneur. I saw that there was a need in the marketplace. Every business idea is not a good business idea. Every business idea is not relevant. And sometimes as entrepreneurs, we have to get out of our own way to ask those tough questions of like, I like this business idea, but does it make sense for this time of wherever the market is? You know, I've always, people ask me now, like, hey, should I get into the tour business? I'm like, well, I'm like, getting in right now is not going to look like what it looked like for me 7 years ago. So I'm not telling you not to get in, but understand that you're not going to have the same runway for success that I did 7 years ago, because the market has shifted. Everybody is like, when I got in, it wasn't in all 50 states. And so I got in very early. And so now if you're getting in, you're up against a lot of other, Toro hosts who have now figured out their own niche within that market. So yes, get in, but understand your ceiling may not be as high as what mine was 7 years ago. That's the objective viewpoint. That business owner could look at me like, oh, you're being, you just don't want me to get in your business. No, 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 no. Everybody has a chance in entrepreneurship, but we have to be very objective to where our business stands within the marketplace. Is it actually meeting a need, or are you entering a marketplace that's somewhat saturated? And so it is very important for an entrepreneur to maintain the fact that a business that was relevant yesterday may not be as relevant today. And so I always have to refine that way of thinking, which is why we scaled back. I had 30 cars at one point. Right now I have about 8. And the reason being is because the market was so saturated. There was, we had more cars sitting at one point than we're moving. So as a business owner, I have to adapt to the demands of the market. That doesn't mean that I'll never have 30 cars again, but right now the need is not for 30 cars within the marketplace because of how saturated it became. So I sold those cars. I got ahead of it. I realized that that's what was happening. I sold and I maintained what makes sense for the business today. Now, what that looks like in 2030 could be completely different. So it's very important for founders to be very adaptive. We have to be pliable, flexible, and we also have to be thinking ahead. Nobody, like when you think about an executive team for a huge corporation, they're always thinking ahead of like, hey, what are the trends saying? As a business owner, you have to be all of those in one. So you have to be the critical thinker. You have to be the objective thinker. Then you do have to kind of push yourself at times as well. So those are the mindsets that, in my opinion, requires to be a successful business owner.
I like the conversation. I like the way it is going. Um, then you also said something very important that I think people need to pay attention to. That you see a need in the market. In the essence, you look at your society, you see what people are looking for. And in every society, there are always something that people are looking for, which is again now, if you're an entrepreneur, at least if you are the one who want to find a solution to the people, there is always something to do. There is always something. I remember, for example, a couple of years ago, there was this idea that it will get that in the future, people will cook their food and send to you in the house so that you don't need to worry about that. People were thinking about how is that going to be a possibility? Then COVID happened. The other things happened. Today, as I'm talking, if I need to eat a pizza, all I need to do is just call somebody. They prepare the pizza in their, of course, they have a shop. They bring it to my home. I eat a pizza in my home. At that
Mm-hmm.
time, a couple of years ago, you couldn't even think that was going to be a possibility that somebody will prepare food and bring it to your house. That is a business. Now,
Yes.
for somebody that start up that business, that is a network. It is saying that somebody need to prepare the food. Another person need to deliver the food. Somebody need to take an order on the telephone. You see, the person is creating a business not just for himself alone, but for other people. And it's also meeting the need of the people like me who want to eat pizza.
Yep.
You see, this could also be translated in many other things. Okay, let's look at our community. Let's look at the diaspora community. Maybe you want to eat pounded yam. You don't know how to eat. Okay, pounded yam is what we eat a lot in West Africa now. It's our most famous food. You don't know how to eat it. But can you still eat it? Of course you can eat it. Can you eat it without going to the restaurant? Of course you can. What if you could just at your home, just dial a number, you're in New York, get me a pounded yam. I need food for 5 people. Somebody will prepare this food and get it to your house. That is meeting the need of the people. Now you make money, of course, from it, and you also create job in the community. You see,
Yep.
why I'm bringing this analogy in is that there are many ways for people to do something and get money out of it. Because the money will never come down from the tree. But if you render a service, the money will come. Now, I
Yep.
remember there was this book that I read a couple of years ago, written by Watode Wallace. The book is titled The Science of Getting Rich. Wallace was saying that there is a thinking stuff from where every other thing comes from, which is what we really need to understand, that there is something that we all are part of. If you fulfill that need, the money will come to you. Because you don't want to be looking for money now. Give me money, give me money. No. What are you willing to do for people? Because if you do
Mm-hmm.
something for people, now imagine me, I'm in the house. I don't want to hustle around looking for, I don't even know how to do pizza. Okay, when my wife is around here, she can do the pizza, but I don't know how to do that. I want to enjoy my pizza, and I don't even want to go out.
Yep.
Somebody can just get the pizza, bring it to my home. I pay for it. So I don't know if you want to expand on that a little bit, that there are many, many things that we can do. You don't necessarily need to start a car business now. But apart from that, are there other things, or is it only car business that people can do as entrepreneur? Please expand on that.
Yes. So I think one of the things that people have to be okay with is when you find a niche and you believe that you have something that you can present to the marketplace, you have to build credibility. So it's very important. And so this leads me into my consulting brand. When I started Hybrid Focus Consulting, it was because there was a need based on the shift of the pandemic. People had to move their businesses from being in person to virtual. A lot of people did not know how to do that. And so immediately I was kind of like, it's not that big of a deal. Like every business can essentially be moved from a place to where you're doing in-person work to virtual work, but you have to know how to use the tools. And if you do not know how to use the tools, then, people can feel stuck. And so essentially what I began to do was just help folks adapt to the tools. And I was doing this for free. I'm like, hey, my purpose in life is to support my community, move my community forward. And so that's not always putting a dollar amount on something. And so if I need to step in and I need to support a business or a community leader who is trying to get from point A to point B, if my purpose is to move my community forward and they are not able to afford that in the immediate, then my conscience tells me, like, you know what, support them, because in supporting them, like you said, the money will come when it's supposed to. So I spent the first year of my consulting business just really supporting people for free. I was doing very much like this, not necessarily podcasts, but I was doing webinars on how to adapt, to the ongoing need of the pandemic. I was helping parents navigate what a school at home looked like, what virtual learning looked like how should you be setting your young people up for success. I was doing it for free. I was like, hey, pop in, listen to what I'm saying. I was just putting out the information. And you fast forward, a school district in the south part of the Chicagoland area wanted to do a seminar for parents. And they're like, hey, we heard that you're doing these seminars for families. What is your fee? And I was like, whoa, I haven't charged anybody. I don't even know what my own fee is. And my brother, who is 10 years my senior, he's been doing this work much longer. So I reached out to him like, hey, they asked me what my fee was. I'm like, how should I be thinking about this? So I was so excited because, I was just happy to help. But here it is, because I had built that credibility, someone now was asking me, what is your fee? And so I was able to, and I was nervous when my brother's like, well, give them this number. And if they say they can't afford it, then you always, then you can say, well, what can you ask them what their budget is? And so I gave them that number, and they were like, no problem, Mr. Harris. Do you want us to mail you a check, or how do you want to get it? And I'm like, whoa, I'm like, it was that easy. And so, but that came from me starting to do the work first and not necessarily looking to attach everything that I was doing to a dollar amount. Let me build value. Let me build that credibility. And like you said, the money will begin to come. And so since then, now I can charge the top dollar, because over the last 5 years, I positioned myself as a consultant who gets the job done. Like, hey, if you want something done in this space, go see Q Harris over at HFC. He does this at a very, very high level. And so now I can just say, like, hey, if you need any references, if you need anybody to kind of like give you some feedback on the work I do, let me know. I have a numerous amount of names that I can send you based on the work that you're looking to get done. And so that's what I would say is you have to really just start doing the work. Credibility will follow. It has to. Like, it's just a part of the law of attraction. If you lean into something heavy, eventually you're going to start seeing the fruits of your labor.
That's interesting. It's not possible to plant and not receive the reward. It's not possible not to put a seed on the ground, because the nature is very faithful. If you go put a seed on the ground, it will germinate, which is to say, you will reap what you have sown. But if you haven't planted anything, you can reap. You will reap nothing, of course, because now you will reap your reward of nothingness.
Yep.
All right. Now, tell me something. I'm curious, because now when you were talking about your car business, you started from 1, then 2, then 3, then from there you get to 5, and then you had 20. Now, from there, I'm looking at it, running one car as a business is one thing, but running like 20, 35, or 30, that becomes something now. Tell me about the logistics, the insurance. How do you take care of all the whole thing that need to happen at the back end before the person can have the car to reuse again? How simple
No,
is that for
absolutely.
you?
So what we decided and this is one of the importance of partnership. Is also the importance of ongoing learning. One of the things that I'm very big on is I believe that we should all be learners for life. So while I have a formal education, I went to college, I've gotten a master's degree, I continue to learn. And while I might not go get a doctorate and all that, I do believe that there should always be ongoing learning. So there's always a book that I'm opening up. There's always an article that I'm reading on the work that I'm doing to stay knowledgeable about the times that I'm in. So it's no different within the business. So in my mind, how do I scale this business with as little risk as possible? Also, what is the end game? So having a true exit plan. You always want to know, the same way you've gotten into a business, if I decide that I want to sell or I want to get out of the business, what does that look like? So identifying that on the front end is very important. And so what we decided and what we realized is one of the first challenges that I had with this business was maintenance of cars. When you're renting your car out to someone, they're not driving it like it's their own car. They're driving it like it's someone else's car. So they're not thinking about the maintenance. They're not thinking about hitting the brakes too hard. And they're not thinking about, like, hey, if I'm flaring down on the gas, what this may be doing to the transmission. That they could care less about that. I have this car for a few days and then I'm handing it back to you. So as the owner, I have to be forward thinking about, how do I maintain the integrity of my vehicles? And so the first 3 cars that I brought up, they were they were all older vehicles. They're 7 to 8 years old, still good cars, but they had a lower tolerance for wear and tear. And so I found that a lot of the money that I was generating in profit was going back into maintenance. So my best friend, who I brought on as a business partner, this is where he's the expert. He understands the car market. He understands what to look for. He understands how to go and get the deals. So I said, hey, man, how do we circumvent this maintenance thing? I'm like, I can't give all of my money to maintenance. How do we get around this? So he was like, hey, we leverage our credit. And so here in the States, we all folks have credit that's attached to their social security numbers, and your credit score determines how much you can borrow. And so me, all three of us, we had great credit, right? And so we leveraged our credit to be able to do what we call high mileage leases. And so we were able to walk into dealerships, get brand new vehicles, high mileage on a 3-year lease. And so the car note is a lot lower, and we only paid the first month down. So it allowed us to be able to get into a vehicle without having to put a lot of money out. We're only paying for the first month in car note, which we were able to recollect that within the first 14 days. And so we were able to go get these cars, leveraging our credit against the company. We were guarantored against our company, but we were pulling in these brand new vehicles with high mileage leases for just putting down the first month. So here it is, depending on the car, you're coming in, giving them $500. You're driving right off the lot with a brand new car, and you're putting that on the platform. And so we would keep those cars for 3 years, typically put about anywhere from 50,000 miles on them. But right around that 50 to 60,000 mile mark is when you start needing maintenance. So we were able to get around the maintenance by doing these high mileage leases, turn them back into the dealership right around the time when they're going to start needing a lot of work. And we got out of the base. So now we need to worry about our oil changes and tire rotations, things that don't cost a lot of money. And so we just kind of once a month, we will all be kind of going in, find good deals, leasing these cars, putting them on the platform. And from an insurance standpoint, we got fleet insurance after a while. Once we got so many cars, we got fleet insurance, which allowed us to pretty much insure our cars from anywhere from $40 to $50 per car under that fleet insurance. So while it was a big number monthly, but when you have 30 vehicles, spending $1,500 on insurance for all 30 cars, it's not that much. And so, especially when all those cars are making money. And so that was the way that we were able to scale it without taking on a whole lot of risk. And then as far as storage, we rented out a small office space that had a big car lot that really didn't have any. They didn't care about how many parking spaces you use. They had more than enough parks. And so we spent, $500 renting out a small little office space in a big suite building. And then we used really that $500 so we have somewhere to park our cars. And so we put them close to the airport. So that way, people coming in town at O'Hare, O'Hare is one of the largest airports in the US. And so there's always folks traveling in looking for rental cars. So we're 15 minutes away from the airport. People can leave the airport, come in our car, we'll deliver it to the airport, and boom. So you had a system that allowed, one, we kept our risk low. We knew that we were in a location that would generate a lot of folks, and it all worked out. And so we were able to build that system and keep it going.
What about being able to piece all this together? Did you need to have all this idea before you start, or you started then? You begin to figure out some of the things. Okay, we got one of them, for example, now, because one of the things that you learned is that you started this business now, then you saw that you were spending a lot of money in the maintenance because the people, like you said, they just ride the car without really caring about the car because definitely they know that it is not their car. But other than that, there are other things that are hooked up to make the business run. Do you need to figure this out in the beginning of when you call this a business, or do you need to figure it out one at a time? As the issue is coming up, you are resolving it. The next issue come up, you resolve it. Or do you need to list out all the possible issues that can happen? Then you have a solution to them before you start. Again, I'm asking this question because of entrepreneurs that are listening to us, or founder, or the founders of tomorrow who need to undergo this journey. What do you say?
Yeah, so a part of it is trying to plan for as much as you think in advance but there's always going to be things that you have to adapt to as they come. So, think about if you're navigating somewhere and you put in the GPS where you're going, right? And you're navigating to that space. Maybe construction started somewhere along your route. The GPS doesn't know that yet. So what do? You have to follow the detour. And so you have to move around that in that given time. So you have to adapt on the fly versus what you plan. You planned your route out. You know exactly where you're going, but there's construction. So now you have to go the detour route. So it's the same way as an entrepreneur, where you can do all the planning in the world, but there's always going to be things that come that you may not realize. There's a hiccup. For example, we did not realize that when you put so many cars from one dealership or one company, so Honda, for example, we have a lot of Hondas. We get to our fifth Honda, it triggered us being a fleet company. So the bank reached out and said, hey, this is your fifth Honda. You have to sign up for a fleet account. We're like, whoa, because that requires a whole lot of other stuff when you sign up for a fleet account. We didn't know that. We were just in a dealership like, hey, let's get another Honda. So that was something that we had to adapt to on the fly. Another thing was just simple logistics with how we put, when we take our vehicles to the airport, I would used to leave the key under the floor mat. I didn't know that I could go on Amazon and buy a lockbox for my car. And I was just putting the key up under like, hey, I'm like, man, I hope nobody checks the doors, and I'm like, man, but I didn't know that I could just get a lockbox. And so it wasn't until I was passing through I had sold a car it's a company car, Carvana. And I sold a car and I pulled into their car lot and I'm like seeing these little boxes hanging from the windows of the car. And I'm like, what are these? I'm like, these look like little lock boxes that like attach yourself to the window. So here I am Googling like, oh, wow. And these lock boxes cost $30-$40. So I'm like, all this time I've been sticking the key under the mat and I could have bought a lockbox and not been worried about like somebody taking my car. And so another thing was tracking our vehicles. We didn't know where our vehicles were. Then I realized that for, $15 a month, I could track my cars and put the little fob inside of is the thing up under the steering wheel where you can just plug it in and it tracks your car. So these were things that I learned as I was doing the work. I didn't know. But there's going to be things as founders that you're going to run into that you're going to learn along the way. Then there's also things that you can prepare for in advance. What you have to do is be willing and open enough to understand is you don't know it all. And even now, like as a consultant, I've had this business 7 years, there's still things I don't know. But it's our jobs as founders as we learn these things to adapt. And the quicker we adapt, the more successful we will be. Where a lot of folks make mistakes is when they learn and then they don't do anything about it. And so as you learn, you have to continue to adapt your business. So those are a couple of examples of things that I just didn't know along the way, that as I found out, I kind of had to make those adjustments on the fly.
Thank you. Thank you for that. All right. Now, in the beginning, I think when I asked you the first question or something like that, you made mention of system thinking.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to expand on that a little bit for somebody that also hear that word. Maybe they're hearing it for the first time.
Yes. So think about a business as a wheel. Every wheel makes a loop and it comes to a starting point and it spins around and it comes back to that starting point. And so I operate both a product-based business and a service-based business. So my consulting brand is service-based, so that I actually am serving my clients. So what they receive from me in the amount of value is not something necessarily tangible that they can touch, but is knowledge that I am implementing in them that they find value in, that they are able to then adapt to their business. But then JQLR is a product based. You're actually paying for me to give you a vehicle and you drive in that car. So as a business owner, you have to think of your business, whether it's product based or service based, as a cycle. How do your clients know about you? Once they do know about you, what is done to then help them see that there is value in what you're offering? How do you close them on that value? And then what is the feedback loop once they receive that? And then how does that then circle back into your next client? So that is thinking, that is systems thinking about like, okay, this is the point of conception for my client or for a consumer. and then this is what the closed loop looks like. And so what I have been really good at doing is figuring out like, hey, how do I make that cycle as efficient as possible? There's no holes. I'm not bleeding out money or I'm not bleeding out water in that. And so um, I have a friend who has a baking business. He does cookies. And one of the things that I've been trying to push him to think about is he works out of a shared kitchen because his kitchen at home is not big enough to meet the demand of that. And he works out of that shared kitchen, but then he does a lot of delivering. And so he charges for delivery, but I'm like, hey, you have to think about the implications of that on time. And so here in the States, we have a company called Girl Scouts of America, and they do cookies. They're real big for selling cookies. And they ship these cookies. And I'm like, what happens if you get to a place where you can get out of the delivery and you can shift your business into shipping your cookies? You're already charging for delivery. So what if you took that, put it into packaging, and you now shipped your cookies, and you guaranteed your cookies within a certain amount of time frame, and you guarantee the integrity of your cookie within that time frame? So now what you're doing is you're getting back all of that time that you spent driving around delivering these different batches of cookies all over the city. And now you're relying on the US Postal Service or UPS or what is it, DCL, one of those that, you can FedEx, you can rely on them to deliver your cookie and you get your time back. That's value. So as a founder, what are you doing with that time? That's systems thinking. That is now you're taking that time of that particular part of your wheel cycle and you're eliminating that. I get all that time back to now reinvest it into my wheel. And so as a founder, you want to look at every step of your process and think, where am I bleeding at? Where am I losing efficiency? Where am I losing time? And how can I close that gap? And the tighter you can make that cycle, the more efficient you can then become. Another example is I have a gentleman who he runs a clothing brand. It's called Fathers on Duty. And he's essentially trying to sell fathers on this brand that he has. And it's a really, really good brand. He's even had celebrities who have, taken pictures wearing it and different things of that sort. But what he has done is he's only at this point selling it in person at pop-up shops and as a vendor. And I'm trying to push him to the same idea of like, hey, you are now trading your time for revenue. Now that you have this product and it's gaining traction and a name for itself, it's time for you to put this thing online and sell it even when you're asleep. This product could be selling while you're sleeping, and that closes your loop a little bit. It allows you to become more efficient. Where he has to make the adaptation is that he's not necessarily a guy who, from an electronic standpoint, is big on the computer. And so he's that in person. He's like, man, I like to interact with my people, with my consumer, which is totally fine. And a great founder wants to be able to do that. But you're limiting your reach when that's the only method of doing it. And so I'm like, if that's not the skill set that you have, then you need to assess what that looks like to either learn it or bring someone on your team who can help you adapt. So that way now you're closing that loop of like, man, you're bleeding out time here, which your brand is getting recognition. But what if that person who bought from you at that vendor, someone else sees and is like, hey, then that's nice, I want to buy that as well. Right now they have to go through you. That person cannot say, oh, go to this website and then purchase it from here. And so that's an area where I'm trying to get him to think like we need to refine that part of your brand, because that's going to make your will more efficient. So that's what I mean when I talk about systems thinking. Every business is always going to enter a new realm where now I can be like, hey, how do I refine my wheel cycle here? Like, where am I bleeding out? Where can I refine this and make it even better? And so every time a business grows, there's going to be a new point on that wheel that you can go in and fine tune.
System thinking. Anyway, for those of you that are listening, I hope you understand what Quentin explained to us about system thinking. And of course, if there is anything that you are taking away from this conversation, why not let us know? Leave us a comment below. Let us know what is your thought. Maybe you have a question. Why not bring it forward? Because if you don't say it, you don't find a solution to it. Don't keep it in your head. So Let the people know what you're thinking so you can find a solution. And of course, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a business owner, if you're a founder, learn what Quintet is talking about. System thinking. How do you close the loop? How do you make sure that the money is, you are not getting, of course, you are going to get the money, but you're not getting the money and it's leaking like a basket. It's just falling out, no? You need to keep it so that the system can continue to make itself work. Anyway, having said that, Quintet, I have a question, another question for you. In the beginning, okay, not in the really in the beginning, but sometime I was saying that there is a lot of things that we can do within the community. And of course, within the people that you want to serve, it doesn't necessarily mean that you must be within the African diaspora community, even though that is actually what we are focusing on. I want you to speak more on how to find opportunity or how to find a problem. That is maybe that is what I should say because you are solving a problem. So how do you find a problem to solve as an entrepreneur, as a founder?
That is a good question. I would, there's always going to be problems that we can solve, but I always tell individuals to start from here. Start within the heart of what it is that you are passionate about. One of the things that I tell my young people, when you think about entrepreneurship, in a lot of cases, I tell them, think about something that you're super, super passionate about that you would do for free, whether you got paid for it or not. Like, what is it that you would do? Like if I just had to do this thing and I'm not getting paid for it, I'm just going off the good feelings that I get from getting it done. Start there. Think about some of those things that you're passionate about. Then from there, start to identify like how can it be better. And when you identify that, it'll start showing you what the problems are. Because I mean, there are a million problems that we can identify, but without that passion for it, it's not a sustainable fix because it's going to require time and energy that you may not be able to produce if there's no passion. And so always start with passion, the things that hit you in the heart, in that gut where it's like, man, I wish I could do something about this, and begin there. And then from there, create impact. And eventually people are going to identify you for it. And it's going to become, it starts with you offering the service to then people coming to you looking for the service. And then at that point, then that's when the opportunities for really being able to find revenue, because then you might have somebody who say, hey, I noticed that you've been doing this thing. I don't necessarily need it, but what could you use? Because this is bringing value. And so that's where I would start. And that's how I started with Hybrid Focus. I wanted to see, because my purpose is to support my community and move my community forward, I did not want to see fellow entrepreneurs fail as a result of the pandemic. And so even if I was not getting paid from that, I didn't want to see people fail. So I was willing to help support people in moving their businesses forward, so that way they could remain relevant during, what we didn't know is we would have considered like unprecedented times. And so through that, it led to it becoming something that was bigger than just me helping folks. And now it's become a brand name here in Chicago. And so now I'm able to move forward at a place where now other organizations bring me in to help their clients. I did not necessarily see it as that when I started. It just became a passion project that then led to a business. So start with passion, start with purpose. When you align yourself to what your purpose is, then those opportunities will start to present themselves, and you'll be able to identify that problem that you have the ability to fix, and go in and fix it with your whole heart. Pour yourself into it, and someone will notice. Even when you don't think people notice, they will notice. You found me because I started the podcast. That was my 5-year gift. I wanted to do this a couple of years ago, but it's like, hey, this business has been here for 5 years. There's a lot of knowledge that I have gained as a result of doing this. I want to be able to give some of that away to people for free. And I began the podcast, and I remember somebody called me who I hadn't spoken to in years and was like, hey man, I saw your podcast. I'm like, man, keep doing what you're doing. And in my mind, I'm like, I would have no idea that this individual saw it, but you never know who is watching you. And so it is very important to lean into those things that you find to be important. And before you know it, you'll be impacting somebody you had no idea, and it can lead to an opportunity. And so And here's the other part. Maybe it does not lead into a direct opportunity for you as a founder, but it could lead into work. It could lead into a job. It could lead into a future partnership. So we don't know what direction sometimes our work will take us in, but the point is to remain consistent. And I always say consistency is greater than effort, because effort can waver. There's days when, as much as I love what I do, there's days I wake up and I'm like, whew, I don't feel like it today. I just don't. I need a break. But if I remain consistent, even in those days when I need a break, there's always certain things that I do to keep my brand going. And that's consistency. Consistency will always be greater than effort. And so if you find that consistent pace that you can lean into, effort is going to vary. But if you remain consistent, somebody will always notice.
Thank you for that. That is a good advice. That is a good advice. And I like that you started is saying that we need to find what we love. I think it is very important. In this podcast, we spend a lot of time. There is a professor friend of mine in the UK with whom we have had a lot of conversation around the question of gift, the question of purpose, the question of understanding why are you doing what you're doing. Particularly within the area of entrepreneurship and people that are founding business, we think it is important. Why is that? Sometimes people think that what you need is money. No, what you need is not money. What you need is service. Muhammad Ali said that the rent we pay on earth is a service we render to other people. We must understand that is coming from a deep spirit of Ubuntu in Africa. That you are because I am. I cannot just be because I am strong. I am nothing. But if I have other people like me around me, now suddenly I become somebody because I cannot even see myself. Shakespeare said that the eyes cannot see itself except through the midst of a reflection. So we must ask ourselves what I am doing today, how relevant it is to the people. Because we are here to serve. That is essentially what we are supposed to do. So I think it is a good thing that you said that you must ask yourself, what do you feel inside? Because if you don't follow that, I understand that many entrepreneurs say, look for what can give you money. I understand that, but what if you could transform what you feel inside to what can give you money?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you don't do that, why I think it is important is that you can make the money, but you will still climb 10-story building and jump down because you don't know why you are doing this.
Yep. Very true.
Thank you so much, brother. I wish we have enough time. We'll definitely come back to this conversation again. So tell the people how they can find you. That is very important.
Yes. So I can be found. I am on all social media platforms. So my name, you have it here, Quentin Harris. So you can search me on Facebook. You can search me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Instagram. But also, if you have just concerns or questions around just business, I do offer free consultations. So you can get that directly on my website, which is hybridfocusconsulting.com. And so you can reach me there. And then right on the homepage, you can just click to sign up for a free consultation there as well. And so please feel free to reach out, join my greater network. And of course, you can subscribe to the podcast. The podcast is also called Cue the Mind, Queue. And so it's a play on words. The idea is that we're triggering on the mind. So Cue the Mind podcast is streaming solely on YouTube. So you can find me there as well.
Thank you so much, brother. I appreciate that. You hear what the Quentin is saying. So support the brother. We need to support each other so that we can grow. He has a podcast. He had a business. If you are going to the US, maybe you need a car to maybe use for some time. He's in Chicago. You're in Chicago, right?
Correct.
You can reach out to him. Of course, you will find his name in this podcast so that you can reach out to him and support him if you are within the area of US, or maybe you want to reach out to him for his business. So this is what we are here for. And we thank you so much for being here to the end of this episode. And we'll also ask you to share your thoughts. Let us know what you think about it. And make sure you subscribe also to this channel and share also to other people that can benefit from it. Again, I remain Obehi Air14, and I'm going to be here again next time. Thank you so much for listening. And thank you so much, Quentin.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.